Quick review. Yesterday, we continued talking about reproductive isolation a little bit, about how there's geographic isolation, temporal isolation, behavioral isolation. We actually did an example of how that probably happened on the Galapagos Islands, an example of how you could get 13 different species from one ancestor species. And then we talked about Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, the idea that for a population not to evolve, there's 5 things that would have to not be there, 5 conditions that would have to be met, and any one of them is going to cause evolution. And understanding which of the 5 is happening helps us figure out how evolution is happening. Today, we'll wrap things up. This is related to Hardy-Weinberg. We'll wrap things up with some special patterns we see in evolution besides natural selection. Natural selection is the easiest one to understand. It's one of the most important, so we study it pretty hard. But there's a lot of other stuff going on. For example, accompanying natural selection, happening with it, often is coevolution. And coevolution happens when 2 species' lives are so intertwined, whether it's predator and prey, that would be a good candidate for that relationship. And in fact, predator-prey relationships get as kind of cool and complicated and awesome as they are, usually because of coevolution. Sometimes we call it an evolutionary arms race, right? Like the most deadly poisons in the world, the most deadly venoms in the world exist because the prey gets more and more resistant to the venom, and so the venom has to keep getting stronger and stronger. Those super poisonous mushrooms, they're super poisonous because the stuff eating them didn't stop eating them; it just evolved to resist poison. Little changes in one, the plants that survive the best are the ones that taste the worst, right? Except that then the thing that depends on that plant has to evolve so that it doesn't care what it tastes like. So the plant has to get even more gross, and eventually it's toxic. That's what we mean by a evolutionary arms race. Another great example is plants. Flowering plants, as you know, they do sexual reproduction via the pollen thing, right, that we talked about. And a lot of times it's animals they trick into doing the pollination for them. A lot of times it's insects. Well, that has created some crazy coevolution. The reason flowers are as weird and awesome as they are is coevolution. You got to attract your pollinator. And if your pollinator is getting lured away by something else, you got to get more attractive to it. That's why the flowers smell the way they do, look the way they do. That's how coevolution makes those kind of intricate relationships. So coevolution is when, their life cycles are so connected to each other that a change in one causes a change in the other. Co means together, right? Genetic drift, this goes with the small population thing from Hardy-Weinberg. Small populations evolve without even trying. Without natural selection, without sexual selection. It's just a small population. Anything dies, gene pool is changing. More than it would be in a big population. Anything is born, gene pool changes. So that's genetic. Along with that, there's something called the founder effect. If you picture those finches we were talking about, a few of them getting blown off course and starting a new population, suddenly that population looks disproportionately like those few that founded the population, right? That's going to totally kind of manage, that's going to be a huge part of their gene pool, just those few individuals that started it. So it's called the founder effect. And then there's sexual selection. It's like natural selection, but instead of the environment favoring certain traits, it's mate preference that favors certain traits. Brightly colored birds are a product of that. Peacock's tail is a product of that. The big old pinchers on certain beetles, or the big old rhinoceros horn on certain beetles, about those males battling for mates, that's sexual selection, because the females prefer the women. And what it often leads to the way to spot it is just a big, dumb, ridiculous trait where you go, there's no way that should have survived in the wild. There's no way natural selection produced that. Like, how does that peacock even walk with that huge tail? Well, because females like it, and that's enough.
What's that like ant fly thing called that has like eyes out like this far?
I don't know. Find it.
They
Show
like,
me.
They like battle with each other with their eyes. It's crazy.
I believe it. I want to see that. Like you look at a cardinal and you're like, it's just asking for like the peregrine falcon to come eat it. It's bright red. Well, and one of the ways we explain this, this accompanying natural selection is, well, why wouldn't the female want this bright bird that looks like it should have been eaten but hasn't been, right? If it's that bright and hasn't gotten eaten yet, it must be pretty fit, right? So that's why this kind of works. Okay, that's it. You got a test Friday. Do you have a question, Tristan?
No.
Yeah, no, we're done. So I do want to show you some stuff about did I tell you about the adorable old married couple that studies finches on the Galapagos Islands? Okay, I want to show you a video about them that has a minute. You can kind of see what their work looks like. There's going to be, well, okay.